Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Josh and Jason Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Monday. If you don't know me, I'm a Christian rapper, devoted husband, father, and Army veteran. And Jason will not be with me today. We're actually recording on Monday morning, 4:50 a.m., 4:54 actually. So we have a very special guest for you. JT knows JC is where it was, is basically his site. Okay. And then Decoding Babylon is his podcast. I would love for you guys to go to Spotify and give him a 5-star review on Spotify. Get his
That's
Spotify going.
JT follows JC.
What did I say? JC follows JT. Oh my goodness.
JT knows JC.
Oh, JT.
That's cool too.
Here we go. Okay, he does know him. Okay, JT. That's hilarious, bro. I butchered it. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so yeah, guys. So we have a very special guest. If you guys could, and then also, if you could shout out your TikTok, your YouTube, your podcast and everything. That way, I don't butcher that one.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty much just JT follows JC on everything, even on YouTube. If you want to find Decoding Babylon, it's under my username. So and if you find me on Instagram, that's where I do a lot of stuff. TikTok and use Instagram. Instagram, you can find me a lot of times, and I got a link tree on pretty much everything. I'm on Facebook as well, Rumble. I'm on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all the things.
So subscribe to his YouTube and check out his TikTok. Check out everything. He's got a lot of great information and biblical. And he actually just allowed me on his show, and he helped us grow a little bit. And I really appreciate you having me on. And we're like, hey, I hopped on your show. You got to hop on mine now, man. So
yeah, for sure, man.
Now he's going to be talking about some very interesting information, and everybody just like when we talk about biblical cosmology, or we talk about any type of subject. Obviously give him your ear, but also take all preconceived biases and just kind of put them to the side and let him teach you and see what you come out with.
Yeah, I think my buddy Fidel, always likes to, he's one of these guys who's kind of helped me along in this topic. What we want to talk about is the possibility that we're in the short season of Satan. And first of all, maybe we should just go right to that, because I think a lot of people don't even really understand what the short season is, or the little season. So after Christ comes back and basically does his thing, he establishes a 1,000-year reign. I believe the eternal kingdom started as soon as he ascended, though. So I think there's a period that's carved out by God for some reason that's 1,000 years. And so obviously a millennial reign, whether that's a literal 1,000 years or it's an indefinite amount of time. I'm the mindset that it's literal, because it just says 1,000 years. I'm not going to, who am I to say that's wrong? But here's what it says this is Revelation 20, and it's a very short chapter. It says, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand a key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. And he seized the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him to the pit, and shut it and sealed it over him, so that he might not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be released for a little while." And so, of course, then I'm going to skip down to verse 7, and it says, "And when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out and deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog, Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of sea, and they marched up the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of saints and the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. And the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were. And they were tormented day and night forever and ever." So I don't know if you guys are like me, but I've read Revelation many times. Yeah. And when you get to the part about, like, okay, so in Revelation 19, the beast and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire. But for some reason, God decides he's going to bound Satan for 1,000 years and then let him out. And I was always like, why is he going to do that? And then I thought, what's even crazier than that is, if you believe all the events of Revelation played out like it's written, how in the world would Satan deceive everyone or deceive all the nations again after all that? And that's kind of one of those things where it always kind of stuck with me. Like, that's so weird. And then I started to think about it, like, well, it's got to be a pretty massive deception. It's got to be like something that, like, what could Satan do to deceive people in that kind of way? And I started to think he probably would have to lie about everything that happened previously. in order to deceive the people. And he would also probably have to lie about who all the people are going to go march up to fight. Because if you read the playbook here, you know it doesn't end well for them. It's like, it doesn't sound like it's much of a battle. It sounds like he literally just gathers people together just so they can go get burned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, with that being said, I want to go over to, I was saying, and this is something that, because this is a sensitive topic for a lot of people, because it is like, I was not on board right away, as like I said, very similar to the biblical cosmology. But here's a verse in the Proverbs that that me and my buddy Vitaly like to quote. It says, this is Proverbs 18:13. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is folly and shame. And so basically, as Christians, we're supposed to listen, with patience. And, if you don't listen, because so many people are so resistant right now, because obviously if I say, I believe Jesus already came back, so many people are like, whoa, 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 you're not even a Christian anymore. And it's like, wait a minute, hold up.
Yeah.
Hold up. Just let us make the case first. I mean, before we get called heretics, because that comes out quickly. And I don't know, I guess to me, it's hard. It would be harder for me to get here without all the other research I've done in all the other areas that I did not think were related. And it's kind of like a thing where, like, a good example of this would be like the heliocentric model and versus biblical cosmology. And people often say, I'm sure this is the question you probably get asked most often. Well, why would they lie about that?
Yeah, I get that for sure. And dude, here's the thing too. When you're a baby Christian and you just start coming to the faith, you're going to be relying heavily on the mainstream teachers and also and your pastor, right? You're going to rely heavily on him because you think that that's the way you go into this. So that's what happens. So that's another thing, because you're going to be instilled from the mainstream pastors and also from your pastor, a type of theology that gets spoken, whether you're in a certain church, Calvary Chapel, you're here. So that's going to happen as well. So that's why it's kind of an uphill battle of deprogramming, because you're going to get the dispensationalism. And then there's another one called all millennialism, which would kind of fit into what you're saying, but it would make that 1,000 year not a literal 1,000 years. So there's certain things that you go through, but as you get more and more into the word, you're open to subjects like you're going to go over when you're a little more seasoned, right?
Right. Well, I think you're absolutely correct. And I was saying this when I was first talking about this on my podcast and to do some live streams about it. I was saying, if we're being honest here, we have been told what the Bible said before we ever read it. Like, we have been programmed to believe things that it said before you ever read it. And it's not necessarily even by your church. It doesn't mean you were taught wrong, but you were taught what was in it before you could even comprehend what's in it. So like certain concepts about, like, again, like, let's just say being saved by the grace in the blood of Jesus Christ and with faith in him. Like, okay, so somebody told you that, good. But you didn't know it was in there until you were told that. And then you went and read it. And of course you confirmed it and it's true. But now there's a lot of things about, like, there's just kind of church dogma, I believe, that's just out there that things to be true. It's kind of like very similar to the biblical cosmology, where I know the earth is a spinning ball. I know it goes around the sun. So therefore, when I read Genesis 1, some things are kind of like, I'm not really sure what that means, but I know this to be true before I read the Bible. So therefore, the Bible's not wrong. So then I try to fit the scriptures around what I know to be true already.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's bias going in already.
Right. So like you kind of have respect for the scriptures, but you really don't, because you want it to be true, but you also want the things you know to be true as well. And so that's like, it's almost like you have to defend the Bible against, like, what you know to be true. So like in your mind, you kind of create these kind of these contradictions, basically.
Yeah.
And then, so there's so many, I'm sure that, like, when we start going through the verses, this is what's going to come up. So like, so very similar, where when you read the book of Revelation, you read the Gospels, the Gospels very specifically, like, Jesus did not come back. So when you read Matthew 24, he can't mean that. When he says this generation to them, He cannot mean that he came back because he hasn't come back. But what if he had? It makes a lot more sense because, like I said, when you start to unpack the Gospels, what they say, like you'll get a very clear timeline of like what was done and when it was done. Like there's nothing that our God is but very specific and intentional. And so I think the thing that really started to creep me, like really started to get in my head when I was reading the book of Daniel, and I was like, Daniel stuff sounds like it's really happened. If you start to know a little bit of history, there was Antioch Epiphanes. He was during the Second Temple. He like desecrated the thing with pigs and stuff like that. But then when you find out what happened in like 70 AD in the Jewish-Roman War between, like we'll get into this further, but this is when the Second Temple was destroyed and all these things happened. Horrible things happened to Jerusalem. Most people don't know that. Like that's one of those things where I was saying, as a guy who's a conspiracy theorist, I'm like, wait a minute. All right, so some people try to say that the book of Revelation was written after 70 AD. So therefore that's not really that important. But then you're kind of thinking like, well, wait a minute. So if John wrote Revelation 95 AD, why didn't anybody write about the temple being destroyed? Because that seems pretty significant as far as like biblical prophecy
goes. That's a giant event that happened. Yeah.
It's about as big as there's been. So if you go in, so here's where I think a lot of people get off track, and I think that this is something I'll just say that's just not biblical. It's dispensationalism. So they'll try to say that there's a 70-week prophecy of Daniel, and so the 70 weeks would basically be it starts with the order to rebuild the temple, right? So that's when the 70 weeks kicks off, and 70 weeks are 70 periods of 7 years. Like, so each week is 7 years. And that's where people get the idea there's a 7-year tribulation at the end. Now, what they don't tell you is that the 70 weeks starts at the order to rebuild the temple. And the 69th week ends with Jesus being baptized.
Yeah.
It's sort of amazing, obviously, other than just an all-powerful sovereign God, that this could work out the way it did. But the 70th week starts with Jesus being baptized and his ministry starting. Midway through the 70th week, that's when Jesus is crucified. Crucified, rises again. 40 days later, he ascends to heaven. And then the 70th week ends with the stoning of Stephen. And I think it was like 34 AD. So all these events, when you look at them like they're said, so that's when I was saying, like, wait a minute. If the Daniel prophecy starts, there's not a temple in Jerusalem anymore, right? There's no temple then, because that's during the captivity is when he's prophesying these things. And so what the dispensationalists say, there'll have to be a third temple. But it's like, but he's literally talking about a second temple he's prophesying about a second temple to be built. It's quite a prophecy that the people of Israel are going to come back to Judah after all the things that happen. And so many dispensationalists almost like, it's just like, yeah, let's get past that, and we're going to skip. And then you were going to put a 2,000-year gap between week 69 and week 70.
Yeah, it's called the church gap. Yeah, and it's between Daniel 9:26 and Daniel 9:27. Just so you guys know, they feel like there's a gap between there. And then
go ahead. No, you
do your thing, bro. You're teaching.
No, okay. So I want to go right into this. Here, I'll let you give your thoughts right after this. I was saying what's interesting is the way Daniel is written. Okay. So here's a pretty interesting verse when you think about it. So Daniel 12:4, it says, and so this is after he's getting the prophecy, and he's talking to, I believe it's Gabriel, the archangel. And he says, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. And so he's saying, seal up the book. And it's funny, my wife actually, she was challenging me on some of this stuff as we were reading the Bible again. Reading the Bible straight through, actually, you get a lot more kind of understanding. Like chronologically, you go Genesis to Revelation. And so when you start to see it, it's like you start to see the context of everything. So she was like, wait a minute. If he said seal up the thing till the time of the end, but we have it now. And I was like, yeah, I guess that is true. And so, but it's interesting. So he's saying seal the book up because it's like it's going to be a long time before this happens. Well, based on when Daniel got the prophecy, and like I said, the end of the 70th week, it's about 600 years maybe a little less than 600 years. Okay, so think about this. And so now you go to the book of Revelation. So Revelation, very parallel book where it says, Revelation 22:10. And he said to me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Or other translations say the time is at hand. So the contrast would be that this is going to be 600 years, so seal it up. It's not relevant to you guys. Wait till the end.
Yeah.
And then in the book of Revelation, the angel says, do not seal this book up because the time is now. You know, even the beginning of Revelation, John talks off, he says, Revelation 1:9 says, I'm your brother in tribulation, as he's talking to the seven churches. And I just think that's interesting that when you think about it, so they said to seal this book up till the time of the end. And how often is Jesus and Jesus starts quoting from the book of Daniel in Matthew 24.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And like he was saying, and Daniel 9:26, it says, and after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and sanctuary. The end, it shall come with a flood till the end of the water. Desolations are determined. So it says, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. So what people believe is that he is supposedly going to be the Antichrist.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
it. But in the middle of the week, it's capitalized, which would be Jesus, shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and the wing of abomination shall be the one who makes desolate, even in the consumption which is determined and is poured out on the desolate. So I never knew when I first started being a Christian that's a future event until I was taught that by Calvary Chapel, which is dispensationalism, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I didn't know that. So I'm like, I had a person on my show point that out and his name is David Gardner, and he pointed out a whole different eschatology I wasn't even aware of. And this is another one that's even an add-on to his, basically, which I would love for him to hear this episode. I'll send it to him. But
yeah, well, it's interesting how he's saying like, yeah, that he's making a covenant. And so everyone's always like, yeah, the Antichrist is going to make a covenant with somebody. And you're like,
yeah,
but like literally Jesus is coming, offering he's bringing the new covenant of his blood, and he's offering it to many. And then obviously eventually it gets extended to the Gentiles too. And then you even think about it, it's like, it's funny how like you can disconnect these things in your mind. But I did always kind of think about that, cutting off the sacrifices. I was like, well, Jesus was the last sacrifice though. So doesn't he kind of, I mean, like that's what we're even taught. Like, so isn't he the kind of one who puts the end to the sacrifices? I mean, they talk about the veil being torn when Jesus is being crucified.
Yeah. And that's it.
You know,
I know no more sacrifices.
Yeah. There was no more. That's why it's funny that people talk about, like, I started to just understand, like, once you realize that the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, we're waiting on a third temple so they can start sacrificing again, only so they can stop sacrificing. But they haven't been sacrificing for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of problem.
You're like, third temple would have to be built, and then they would have to start sacrificing again.
Right.
And then, it gets interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of like, so that's why, like, even like the modern view where it's like, oh, they got the red heifers and they're going to start sacrificing. And it's like, if you read the book of like Numbers and Leviticus, it's like the red heifer, there's not this overemphasis on the red heifers like they're making it out to be right now. The red heifers were meant for cleansing rituals, for like if you touched a dead body or if you had like leprosy. You know, it's a part of the overall sacrificial law, but they're trying to put this overemphasis on it, like, oh gosh, you're about to get the red heifers now. And you're like, and then what? I mean, like, are they, and then they're going to build the temple? I mean, supposedly it does feel like that perhaps if the devil's deceiving everyone, is it possible that he's putting this stuff out there? This is like chum in the water. Hey, look, it's getting close, Maybe Jesus is coming back. But anyways, as we get into that, let's just go right into
let's do it.
Let's go right into Matthew. Well, let's just go into some of the verses that the base of the reason we get into this view. Okay, so I think one of the ones that people really, this one has probably tripped a lot of people out. And I think this is even before we go to Matthew 24, Matthew 16, 27 and 28. And he says, and this is he's talking to his disciples, the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there will be some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Okay, so there's many explanations for that, and I find them all, I found over the years them to be all unsatisfactory. okay, so he says, he's talking to his disciples. He says, some of you standing here are not going to die or going to taste death until you see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Okay, so some explanations are the next chapter, 17, is the Transfiguration. So Jesus goes up on Mount Hermon with John, Peter, and James, and they see the glorified version of Jesus, and they see Moses and Elijah. But again, look at the language he used. Some will not taste death. Okay, well, nobody died at that point. So the fact that those three saw, but what I would say is, here's my verse to counteract that conclusion. Or some people even say that, oh, John did see that when he wrote the book of Revelation. And I said, that's a cop out. I mean, because obviously when he's talking about you seeing things, I mean, I don't think he's talking about visions. I mean, many prophets had seen visions of the day of the Lord, but I don't think really any of them, like nobody saw when he's saying you're going to see it. Okay, so what he says to what I found this was interesting is when he calls Nathaniel. So if you guys are familiar, in the Gospel of John, he calls Nathaniel in the first chapter, and the setup was that like he's talking to him, and so this is John 1:50 and 51, and Jesus answered him, because to you I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these. And he said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. So he's saying, you will see me with the angels coming. I mean, so you think about it, like that is how he starts. That's John chapter 1. And he's calling Nathaniel and he's saying, you will see this. And so obviously him saying you're gonna see this after you die, you're gonna see this in a vision. I mean, if you see, he was basically saying, you think it's crazy that I saw you on the fig tree, you're gonna see this. Like you ain't seen nothing yet until this. Here's another verse. Let's go into Matthew 10:23. And when they persecute you one town, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. Right? Okay, let's do a couple more. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So this is another one where they say that, like a lot of people would say, okay, well, the prophets, the good people, maybe even the resurrected will see him coming. But here's what he says to the high priest Caiaphas, the one who's about to get him nailed to the cross. But Jesus, this is Matthew 26:63 and 64. But Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said, you have said so, but I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. So he says that Caiaphas is going to see that, which makes me believe, this makes me go right into Zechariah 12:10. And he says, I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and pleas of mercy, so that when they look on me, on whom they have pierced, they shall mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and weep bitterly as one weeps over a firstborn. So I mean, that always stuck with me again too. It's like when they're saying, oh well, they're going to see, the people who pierced him are going to see him, and you're like, who pierced him? Yeah. So like the Romans pierced him. I would say that you could say that the Jews who got him nailed to the cross pierced him. And if you think about it, you got a Jewish-Roman war. And if he came back during that time, who would have saw him? The people who pierced him, yeah. The people who pierced him.
Yeah. A lot of people feel like, oh, well, they think it's the future generations that end up in Israel, the ones that are there now, right?
Well, they believe that the dispensational thing is like they believe in 1948, but when it comes down to it, it's like, again, you get a little conspiratorial when you look into it. I mean, of course, I would encourage everybody to actually look into the establishment of the nation of Israel, of course, because again, like these people, I mean, people argue about, are they the real, the real Jews or not, or in that kind of stuff. And I'll just say this, that the Bible describes what a real Jew is. I think in Romans, it talks about somebody who's circumcised on the inside, not on the outside. So Jesus tells the people that claim to be children of Abraham, if you were children of Abraham, you'd be doing the same works as him. It's being a Jew is more than just being related to somebody, because that's what he was saying. Like, you even think about like that, some of the, even Paul talks about it in Galatians when he's talking about that Abraham had more sons than Isaac, but only one was of the promise. So Ishmael got sent away. Even after Sarah died, he had more sons. So it was more than just being related to Abraham, making you a seed of Abraham. And of course, after Jesus came, Galatians, was it 3:28, when it says, if we're one in Christ, there's no slave nor free, no male nor female, no, yeah, wait, I messed that up.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But like we're all one in Christ, and we're all seed of Abraham if we're in Christ.
Yeah.
So I mean, at the end of the day, like all the prophecies are fulfilled through Jesus, and we can have a part in God's Jesus' inheritance through him. And apart from him, there's no inheritance for anybody. There's no promises for anyone apart from God's Son.
Yeah, it gets interesting, man, and you find out like basically the who was involved in placing him there, who donated 144,000 acres of land. Is it Baron Rothchild, I believe, that did that? And then
well, yeah, I believe so. I mean, obviously I'm not exactly sure which one, but I mean, there's
it's almost like they placed, like you said, it's just like if the devil wanted to plan this out and have you focus on the Middle East and show you that the end times are coming still. It's like the perfect storm for that, for what we're talking about right now. And it's like the Rothschilds like donated that, and then they put him there at 1948. It would line up exactly with the Daniel prophecy, and they have everybody focused on Israel. And now we got a war going, and everybody's just looking at that and waiting for the red heifer, waiting for the new temple. So if he wanted to deceive you, it's a perfect storm for that right now. So I do understand that side of it for sure.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's also, if you think about it like that, that's when they talk about like the ideas behind like the pre-trib rapture and like the supporting of Israel no matter what. Basically came out during the Schofield Bible, who like the Rothschilds and them are behind that kind of thing, where again, it's like the modern Christian church thinks that you're supposed to support Israel no matter what they do. And you're like, have you read the Bible? It's like God didn't support Israel no matter what they did. I mean, so like, why would we ever support if you believe the war that they were involved in was not just? Yeah. If they were being cruel to people, are we supposed to support them no matter what? I mean, I'm not saying like I'm not necessarily pointing to this war that's happening, but I could. Just saying that they don't have a blank check with us to just say, just like everybody. I mean, we believe in the Spirit. We believe that apart from Jesus, like I said, there's no salvation. So we want everyone to repent. We want everyone to go to heaven. So both sides of the war. I mean, our hearts should go out to the people,
especially for both sides, 100%, bro.
And so I think that's the thing. But like the idea that we're supposed to just turn a blind eye to things that they've done and then act like, well, the other people were worse. It's like, well, that's not how God looks. That's not how God looks at it.
And God is not telling you, when God tells you to move, that's different. If God says, hey, I need you to do this, like if God's behind it, like we read in the Bible, where like he's saying, hey, in Numbers, he's talking to them about going to the land where the giants are located, or like, like Joshua, he's sending them here to kill all men, women, and children. There's something behind that, bro. There's like a tainted DNA that are like more like Nephilim or giants. See, when God's telling them to move, it's different than somebody that's a prime minister saying, I'm doing this in the name of God, and then the guy's not even Christian or not even religious. He's just using the Bible to say this is why we're moving and we're doing it. So people got to
understand. That's I mean, that's the thing where you wonder if the enemy could be playing out of our playbook in order to trigger us. It's funny because like my buddy and I did a response video to somebody who was basically calling us heretics again for saying these kind of things, and he was saying the devil is, like he was saying, we're not in the devil's little season, we're in the devil's big season, because he's clearly like, we're in the Antichrist deception. And he's like, and it's so obvious. And I'm like, of course I'm saying, like, don't you kind of understand what you just said? Like, maybe you're giving the devil less credit than he should get as far as being the deceiver. Because if it's so obvious that all these things are happening, maybe he's not that stupid. You know what I mean? Like maybe he's actually maybe you're playing checkers and he's playing chess, because he knows you believe this. He knows you want to believe that Jesus is about to come rapture you. and save you, when really it might not be like that. And so he's leaving you all these breadcrumbs, like all the things are going to happen. And also possibly, I believe in a cyclical history where it's like, that's when Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun, that even if you see how, like, okay, so if the people who believe we're about to go into the tribulation believe that there's a conglomeration of nations coming together to form a one world government in order that the Antichrist runs it. Well, I'm not saying too much different, because if you were in Revelation 20, Satan gathered his nations again. So I imagine something similar could look the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same but different. You know what I mean? You're still talking about like probably a Tower of Babel situation, where I believe that when all the nations come together, it ain't good. I mean, obviously, you see what God did to the tower. It's tyranny.
Yeah.
So like, if you see a tyranny forming, it doesn't mean that it's not. I mean, I believe that it is, because before I started talking about this, my very first videos on like TikTok and stuff were end times prophecy videos, because I saw the signs. Like I said, I'm not denying that the signs don't look like things like the mark of the beast and things like that don't look like
everything. It definitely lines up. It lines up, man. When you dig into it, I agree. That's why when someone brings up something like this, I'm not the type that I ever stop somebody from teaching, or because I mean, look at some of the stuff I do. Some people would think I'm a heretic for sure, bro. Biblical cosmology, some people they hate it, bro.
Some people I've heard some people say that the strong delusion is people thinking the earth's flat.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, bro.
I've heard that. I mean,
that's why I don't put it past, dude, especially with all the deceit. Yeah, I don't put it past anybody. And plus, bro, I'm open to people teaching, and you know, and Fitness Flat Earther probably told you that, because when he said it on my show, I was like, I was just like, I've had people come on my show and explain in a certain way, but the only way that I'll take anything is if the Bible says it. I'm down. So you're coming from a different angle. He sent me your video on
but Luke 21.
Yeah. So that's just a little. That was just like a little section. But I still like, hey, if someone's teaching out of the Bible and explaining it like that, I'm down. You know what I mean?
We should probably talk about that. So Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13. They're all parallel chapters. And I really hate it when people try to say that Luke is written for the Gentiles and then that Matthew's written for the Jews. And you're like they have artistic license to basically, change the words of Jesus in order for their audience. I believe that the Gospels are they're trying to be the most authentic accounts they can be of the life of Jesus and the things he said. So I believe that the fact that they're not exactly the same, if you've ever read the book A Case for Christ, it's pretty, I would encourage you guys to do that, because it's a very good apologetics book. But it basically says that the fact that they're not exactly the same actually gives more credibility that they're legitimate. Because if they were like carbon copies, then it would be like, okay, one guy wrote it and then the other guys just copied off him. Yeah. So the fact that they are slightly different, you can imagine. And of course, Luke was not there. So Luke obviously is, combining probably different accounts as well. And then you have Mark, which people believe that's Peter's gospel. Mark wrote it down for him.
Yeah.
And so anyways, let's just go right into Matthew 24. And so this is where this stuff really gets kicked off. Actually, I'm gonna go into Matthew 23 real quick, because I think this is interesting. So what you see often with Jesus, and I encourage people to, when you read if you doubt anything I say, go back and you should. Don't just believe me. Go back and read the things again, and really start to think the audience relevancy, the audience that Jesus is speaking to. So you have to think like that. Jesus was not speaking to us, right? The Bible was written for us, but not to us. So obviously, letters to the Romans were to the Romans. The letters to the Ephesus was to the Ephesians. So those things are like, so when Jesus is speaking to his disciples and they're asking him specific questions, he's most certainly talking to them. And he's definitely talking to the Pharisees in chapter 23. So you can say that there's relevance to us, and I agree, but it has to be true to them first, or it's not true, right? If somebody asks you a question, you could say, well, I meant it for somebody else later. It's like, you'd be a liar, right? Yeah. I didn't really mean you. Even though you asked the question. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
generations. Yeah, you're right.
Right. So here's what he says to, I'm going to go down to, what does he say? This is Matthew 23. And he says, and this is when he goes into a big woes of the Pharisees and how awful they are. But we're going to start with verse 21. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you build the tombs of prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would have not taken part in the shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then a measure of your fathers. You serpents, you brood of vipers, how are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Therefore I send you prophets and wise men, scribes, and some of whom you will kill, crucify, and some you will flog in the synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murder between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation." And so it's interesting. I was saying that the end of the 70th week is the stoning of Stephen. So it's kind of like that they're saying we would not have killed the prophets, but he's like, I'm going to send to you prophets who you will kill. So then you'll be just as guilty as your fathers were. All that blood's going to be on your head. And so that's when he starts to say that, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as hens gather her brood under her wings, and you were not willing? See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of our Lord." So this is how he starts. I mean, so again, somebody put chapters and verses in our Bible. I mean, good, because it makes it easier for us to like focus on it. But you understand, like, this is Matthew 24 is a continuation of this conversation. So as they're leaving the temple, it says, Jesus left the temple, and this is Matthew 24:1. Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the building of the temple. But he answered them, "You see all these things, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will be not be one left here stone upon another that will not be thrown down." And so that's how it ends. Like, that's basically how that one conversation kind of ends. And then it says, "And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us when the signs of these things will be. What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them, of course, and he starts going into it. And so he gives all the signs. But the question was, like, when they heard him say that the temple was going to be destroyed, I believe, this is my belief here, and Luke and Mark are slightly different because they don't mention the sign of his coming or the end of the age, even though Jesus goes on to say all the exact same things. Like, those things are not different, but the way they ask him, I believe that when he told them the temple was going to be destroyed, and he told them that the house was going to be left to them desolate, I believe them knowing and being taught by Jesus for a long time at this point, they knew he meant Daniel, the Daniel prophecies. So later, when he starts talking about the abomination of desolation, he tells you to flee to the mountains. If you're in Judea, flee, which again is actually counterintuitive to what they would have believed at those times, because you think back in those days, they would have said there's a walled, fortified city, which Jerusalem was like a fortress. It was like crazy high walls. I mean, it's like, it would have been the safest place, but it wasn't. So like, what he's telling them would be the opposite of what the conventional wisdom would be. And again, you have to think about this. Like, these are different times. And he talks about women who are nursing or pregnant in those days, and woe to them. And if you have to leave on the Sabbath or in the wintertime, how bad it's going to be. And you're like, okay, so are these conditions we'd have to worry about in 2024? Yeah. Obviously not. And so when you go into the book, well, and then I'm going to skip down to the end, and it says, and this is where some people get into like the idea that this is well, I'll just go right into like this is why people don't believe this. This is why people don't believe this. So verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then there will appear in heaven a sign of the Son of Man. Then all the tribes of earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds on heaven in power with great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from all the end of heaven to the other. And then it says, and remember the first question they asked him, when? They asked him when. So this is obviously, like, he hasn't answered. He's given all the signs of all the things, but then he says, so now he's going to get to when. From the fig tree, learn this lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaf, you know that summer is near. So some people are going to say this is the whole thing, this whole little passage is a parable, but the parable just ends right there. You'll know summer's near based on this fig tree. So also, when you see all these things, know that he is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words shall not pass away. So when he says all that, I said this has been my defense here, where I was saying I can show you if you go look up the works of Flavius Josephus in the Roman Jewish War. Do you know how long the Roman Jewish War was, by the way?
No, I don't.
42 months.
Interesting. Yeah.
It was 42 months. Okay, and so he goes on to say that all these things happen in this generation. Do you know how many years after Jesus said that the temple was destroyed?
Probably 3.5.
No, 40. 40.
Okay,
So a generation. So think about the Israelites in the wilderness. Okay. 40 years. King David was king for 40 years. Saul was king for 40 years. Go into the book of Judges, all these generations, 40 years.
Yeah.
There's 40 days,
40 years in there, bro.
40 years, 40 days, 40 nights. Jesus, after he was resurrected, stayed on the earth for 40 days.
Yeah.
40 is the biblical number for a generation. Very clearly. And so I was saying that when you find out like that the Romans literally pried up all the stones of the temple at the end and left none upon the other one. I mean, R.C. Sproul gave a great teaching about that, and they were saying the temple that Herod built, that I guess the first one would be Solomon's temple, was like a massive megalithic structure. You're thinking like that what Jesus said was probably one of the craziest prophecies anyone had ever heard. Because again, Jerusalem's this awesome city. The temple is a megalithic structure. It's awesome looking. I mean, that's literally what the apostles are saying. Look how great this place is, Jesus. What do you think about it? And that's when he says it's going to be destroyed. There'll be not one stone left upon the other one. And knowing the Romans and knowing a history of the Romans, they were not all about reigning over ashes. They set up governors and prefects, and they ruled over peoples. They would not have trashed a perfectly good temple. But if you read in the writings of Josephus, there was a rage in the Roman soldiers where they weren't even listening to the general Titus, who was ended up going to be the emperor. They wouldn't even listen to him at one point when they're telling not to do this. And they were saying, and at the same time, the zealots were shutting themselves in the temple, ordered to think that, and they were fighting so hard because they believed all the Daniel prophecies were coming true and that God was going to save them. When it was literally the opposite. So like you have these two spirits, like these things where it was like the perfect storm of just a bloodbath because they put themselves in the temple. And I started to think, could that have been the strong delusion where these people literally thought they were going to be saved by God after they had killed his son?
Yeah.
And then they're fighting against the Romans, and the Romans are not even listening to their commanders. And so they were saying, literally, this is in the writing of Josephus, that the blood was running down the steps of the temple. Some of the blood was like up on the horses' bridles. Wow. That's straight out of Revelation 19 about how high the blood goes. And then even, and it's crazy, if you read into the writings of Josephus, in 65 AD, I think, sometime during the war, this is, Josephus said this, Tacitus said this, there were soldiers in the clouds. There was like a heavenly army in the clouds, seen by many people. And I think during the siege of Jerusalem, there was also I think there was a star that was above the city that looked like a sword. All these secular historians write these things. There was a comet that lasted for a whole year. What was the other thing? There was a cow that gave birth to a lamb in the temple.
Wow.
And so there's all these supernatural things happening at the same time. And this is all happening during the destruction of the temple and destruction of Jerusalem. And they said during the Roman Jewish War, Josephus wrote that 1.1 million Jews were killed in that war. Women were eating their own babies. Remember when he says, woe to those who are nursing in those days?
Yeah.
There's famous accounts of women eating their own children. 1.1 million. If you believe the secular numbers, there was 100 million people in the world at that time. You're talking about over 1% of the population were killed just on the Jewish side.
Wow.
And so I'm going to go into Matthew 24, Luke 21, because I thought this was really interesting when you actually consider the counts of like the woman eating their own children. And so when he says, so Jesus is telling them, woe to those who are pregnant or nursing in those days. And so when he's being led up to the cross, and he says, and there followed him. This is Luke 23, starting with verse 27.
Luke 21, 23, or is it 23?
Luke 23.
Okay.
I skipped past where he said that,
okay.
Woe to those, but I'm going to go right to where. So this is Jesus walking up to the cross. And he says, and there followed him a great multitude of people, and of the women they were mourning and lamenting for him. But turning to them, Jesus said, daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves, weep for your children. For behold, the days are coming where they will say, blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that have never nursed. And they will begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, to hills, cover us. For they will do these things in the wood green. What will happen when it is dry? And so if you understand the language he's using, for one, he's obviously saying, this is going to be really bad for you. And he's talking to them. Again, like I said, the audience relevancy is like, so as he said to the disciples this generation, he told the Pharisees this generation, and he told these women, your children. I mean, and then I don't know if you caught I know I mentioned this on my that podcast I'm sure you listened to, but this thing really tripped me out when I made this connection, was when he was telling them, people are going to say, mountains fall on us, hills cover us. And so if you go into Revelation chapter 6, and you go right into Revelation 6:12. When he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to earth as a fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken in a gale. The sky vanished like a scroll, and it was being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the great ones, the generals, the rich and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains, rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him who's seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. The great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand?
Yeah.
I mean, so he's telling them that he's describing that. I mean, so to me, again, this goes back to what I was saying, that some of you guys are still, the programming is so deep in you. Well, that has not, I know that hasn't happened. And then they'll try to point to me and say, well, what about the stars? What about the sky being rolled up like a scroll? What about this? What about that? And that's why I was saying that it would be so easy for me to tell you guys, hey, the abomination of desolation had happened. All those things had happened to Jerusalem, like he said it was going to happen, but he has not come back yet. But you know what? Jesus didn't give me that out way. He didn't give me that back door to get out of this. He said all these things would be fulfilled before this generation passes away. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's like, when you question me about that, it's like, I'm doing my best to find out some of these things. But what I can really tell you is that there is some evidence of some of this stuff. And like I said, we can maybe get into that in maybe a future podcast. But when it comes down to it, I'm really just defending the words of Jesus, because the skeptics, as R.C. Sproul talks about, Matthew 24 is where they point to Jesus being a false prophet, because they, like the people who are skeptical, say he was talking to them. He told them their generation. And then so dispensationals like, well, no, it's the generation of the people that see these things. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it is the generation of see these things, because the first sign that he was speaking about was the temple destruction. And the idea that he's not talking about the temple they're looking at, I mean, that is beyond ridiculous. I mean, like that he's speaking of a future temple. No, like I said, he makes it very plain and clear. And I think that's what Jesus he often talks to people like, are you dull of hearing? Do you not understand like the clear words that I'm saying? That if I'm telling you this generation over and over and over again, then he means this generation. And in the parables he gets into, even I talk about the wicked tenants, where the wicked tenants are the ones who have the vineyard, and basically the owner sets up tenants and he wants them to give him fruit. So he keeps sending people to get him fruit from the vineyard. And eventually he sends his son and they kill his son and they get rid of him. And so what does he do? He says he'll destroy them and give the vineyard to others. And so you can think about like God has not changed. The Old Testament God is the New Testament God. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And when you understand the way he talks about Israel, and then he sends his son to them, and they nail him to a cross, reject him and nail him to a cross, it only makes perfect sense that all the things that happen afterwards happen to that generation. And that's why he was saying this wicked generation, because they were going to reject him and kill him. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's interesting, man. It's a lot of the stuff. Some of the pushback would be like like you said, stars falling from heaven, the heaven departing like a scroll. Like also all the mountains will be shaken, no more islands. There's pushback on it.
Well, it says that, I mean, some of this stuff is like, you could maybe say, is it prophetic language? Because it's like, if the mountains are moved, I mean, could a great earthquake move the mountains?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like, this is when you get into conspiratorial stuff. It's like, we have no idea what it looked like before Jesus came. Yeah. We don't know what the topography was like. We don't know where things were. I mean, that's where some of us have gotten into even possibly questioning biblical locations, because a lot of people even tell you that like there's no mountains in Israel except for Mount Hermon. All the other ones are little hills. So is it possible that might not be the place that it's supposedly said it is? I mean, we don't. I guess I'm not going to say that I'm say one way or the other, because I have no reason to believe it isn't, other than it doesn't really line up. Maybe they were bigger mountains before he came back.
Yeah.
Maybe it did. Maybe it looked different. Yeah. I guess the point is, we have to rely on many things from others. That's what I was saying. Like, there's things that we know. Like, you and I both know all these things before we ever read the Bible, so we know that those things could not have happened. And the sky rolling back like a scroll, I believe that's prophetic language. I don't think that didn't sound literal to me. That sounded more like heaven opens up, just like as he told Nathaniel, you'll see heaven open and you'll see this. Like, so what does that look like? I mean, you could see clouds parting. You could see Jesus come. You could see heavenly soldiers in the sky or something like that.
It could be the firmament open like a scroll, right? And then Jesus came in on the cloud when he did come back. You know what I mean? Because heaven, it could be that. Now,
sure.
And that still could have happened back then.
Well, right. It doesn't say that. Yeah, it doesn't say like this. The firmament rolls back and it never comes back. It just obviously he got through some.
Says he opened the heaven like a scroll, which I believe is the firmament, and I believe Jesus comes in, on a cloud. That's what it literally says. So, as you guys know, if you guys continue reading, now we have a city, like God is going to come down, right? So we got to understand. So God's going to come down and there's going to be a new heaven, new earth. Okay. So you guys know that. And a lot of things are going to happen. So if we are in this, what you're saying, understand that we're getting close to a new heaven, new earth, right? The first heaven passed away.
But actually, I should probably address this, because I know that a lot of people probably.
We got about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I should probably address this real quick before we close out. A lot of people would say, if that happened, where's Jesus at now? And so I believe that people look at not like this, because a lot of people are looking for the kingdom of Jerusalem to be on earth. But isn't it interesting when you actually read what Jesus says, that he talks about the kingdom of heaven, like that's what the kingdom is. It's like, so I believe the kingdom is in heaven. I think that let's go right into, so a lot of people know about New Jerusalem coming down, right? In Revelation 21.
Yeah.
But actually in Hebrews 12, I think 22, it says, Hebrews 12:21. But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God and the heavenly Jerusalem and its innumerable angels in a festival of gathering. So even during the times of Hebrews, there's knowledge of a heavenly Jerusalem. So I believe that that's where the camp of the saints is. Even so, I go into let me see. Say Matthew. Let me see. It's sorry.
No problem. No worries. Also, there's going to be a great white throne judgment as well, guys. So
Yeah.
if we're in that season where he's let out, but I thought part of the deception too, while you're looking up that verse, I thought part of the deception, and a lot of people say during the millennial reign, no one's going to die the 1,000 years, and then he's going to get let loose at the end, and then they're going to be tempted, and those that choose to be with Jesus and choose to be with God get to choose, and that's like part of the temptation. That's what some people that are dispensationalists would teach. The lion lays with the lamb. It's going to be like 1,000 years of millennial reign for Jesus here.
Well, I think some of this stuff gets conflated with what the Old Testament says, and I don't know that. Yeah. Sometimes I think it's funny, we were going back and forth with a guy, and he was quoting stuff about the return to Judah, and also he was conflating with like the millennial kingdom stuff. And I guess the point is that's what the people who crucified Jesus were thinking too. Yeah. They were thinking about the heavenly Jerusalem. They were thinking about an earthly Jerusalem, and they were thinking about Jesus being the king and ruling over all the nations from there. Have you ever heard that? You ever heard that phrase that everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die?
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants. I mean, that's literally true. So like, that's why people would love to believe in a pre-tribulation rapture where they never die, and they go right to reigning back here on earth. But maybe that's not what it is. So this is Luke 17, 20 and 21. And when he was demanded of the Pharisees when the kingdom of God should come, he answered them and said, the kingdom of God cometh not with observation, neither shall they say, lo, is here, or lo, there. For behold, the kingdom of God is within you. And then even you think about, so Jesus is telling the disciples when he's leaving about how, they're obviously, he's telling them as they're obviously very sad that he's leaving. And he says, let not your heart, this is John 14, 1 through 3. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house, there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go and prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may also be. Yeah. So it's funny to think about that, like that. So where did Jesus go when he ascended?
To the right hand of the Father.
He on his throne, right? So he's sitting on a throne next to the right hand. So he was, so even I think the one thing that we can all say, no matter what eschatology you believe, Jesus is on the throne right now, correct?
Yeah.
That's the eternal kingdom.
Stephen saw it too. Stephen, when he got stoned, he looked up, he saw him, on the throne. Right. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I always meant to make the point too, when you think like, so Jesus is standing up, and it's almost like, I was thinking like almost a different view. Stephen actually, part of his speech, he talks about the day of the Lord. And so Jesus stands up after they stone him. And you think about like, maybe it's time for things to happen. Point being that all of us believe that Jesus is on the throne, right? So he's telling the disciples he's going to prepare a place for them where he's going. And then he's going to gather them and take them unto himself. So that does not really give you the idea that he's coming for, I'm going to come prepare a place for you, but then we're also going to go back and we're going to live on the earth.
Yeah.
So I believe that at the end of time, there's a new heaven, a new earth, but I believe the new Jerusalem's already there. Like there's already a heavenly Jerusalem. And so the new heavenly Jerusalem is probably too perfect to come down onto the earth until there's a new one. Mm-hmm. And I believe that that's where it is. So I believe a lot of the things are that, we can't, like flesh and blood are not going to inherit the kingdom of God. Like you cannot go into the heavenly city like this. So even if we could find out where it is, a lot of people believe it's in the north. Could it be over the North Pole? I mean, I believe that if you believe on the biblical cosmology, like that's where God's literally resting, somewhere in the middle of the realm, over there. And that's why possibly the Northern Lights is a vision of heaven, of his throne.
Yep.
So I think so the point being is that as we see like NASA and them, are they trying to get through the firmament? We know that they can't get through like that way. This stuff's not getting through.
Yeah.
Physical
will not be able to get there. Spirit. Yeah. That's why you turn into spirit, is to be able to go through the firmament or go into the earth. Right.
Isn't it interesting too, if you think about it, like being born again to it almost be like that you'd have to pass through the water.
Yeah.
Almost like a second birth where you go through. And so
interesting. Yeah.
And I want to make sure that everyone's clear that some people will try to put words in our mouth saying, oh, well, because of this, there's no salvation, there's no this, there's no that. And it's like, people would, if we say that the rapture had come or gone or whatever, or your belief in the rapture, whether it's a literal thing or not, what I'm trying to say is that if your hope was in a rapture, I think your hope was misplaced, because even in those people's view, you'd have to recognize that nobody's been raptured yet, right? So like chances are you might not get raptured. So maybe your hope should be in eternal life, the place with no more tears, the eternal king, the place that's forever, not 1,000 years. And so that's why I just want to make everyone clear that before you believe me, obviously go read your Bible again, read it with fresh eyes, try to forget what you've been told, read it like a child.
Yeah.
And again, read it with audience relevancy. But at the same time, if we disagree, I still consider you my brother. Like, I disagree with pre-tribbers for a long time. I was a post-tribber for a while. I don't, like the mid-tribbers, whatever. I believe that we're saved by by the grace of God with faith in Jesus Christ. And I don't believe that this is a salvation issue. But I do think it's important. I do think it's important. I think it's important in the way that biblical cosmology is important, where it's like, if you can read what the words say and you can still say they mean something else, I think that's an issue. And I would just encourage you to say, use the Bible to question the things outside the Bible. Do not question the Bible by saying, well, JT, can you prove that the stars fell down? It's like, well, no, I can't, but I can tell you what Jesus said. And I'll just leave you with this, is when Jesus says at the end, he says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not. And I started to be hung on that, saying I believe that he said this. I believe it's very possible that he said this there's going to be a day when people will deny this stuff ever happened. And the only things you'll be left with is that I said it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you believe me?
Yeah. So guys, we're going to wrap up because we're coming to the end. I really appreciate you coming on, brother. Seriously. And this is a good show. And I'm going to have another show with another guest that's going to go over the same thing, and he'll add his input. And, you guys, this is definitely not a salvation issue, but it just shows you what's happening in these times. And you guys could also go back to Revelation Roundtable. You can, if you want to hear the dispensational view. We also have Dave Gardner if you want to hear the all millennial view, and now you have a all millennial mix with a new view. So eschatology is eschatology. This is what he's been studying, and you got to give him props, because he's being like the Bereans, study to show thyself approved, and right. He's biblically trying to show you, and we appreciate it, brother. And so like we always do, guys, we're going to end this in prayer. So Father God, in the name of Jesus, thank you so much for providing us with the Bible. Thank you for providing us with being able to be able to read the Bible and not have to depend on somebody else to read it to us. Thank you for making us literate enough to understand your Bible, also giving us, the Strong's Concordance to go back to, the Hebrew, and all the resources you give us right now, Lord, for us to study the Bible. This, JT or Joe is teaching something right now, Lord, that he believes is true. There's no deception going on here. This is all just so anybody that's listening, Lord, if you could just have them have ears and just to listen and try to take away their preconceived biases and just listen with grace. And anybody that's listening that has any issues right now, as far as drugs or alcohol or any type of chain that's holding them down, Lord, we would just want to ask you to release those chains and supernaturally appear in their life and help them to get closer to you, and help me and help Joe to get closer to the scriptures, and help us get closer to you, Lord, and help us to teach is the best that we can. He has quite a few people that are listening to him. We have quite a few that listen to us, Lord. Help us to make sure that we're teaching everything correctly, like you would like us to do, Lord. Thank you so much for everything you do. We love you, appreciate you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Amen. Thank you, brother. All the descriptions will be below, and you guys will be able to follow JT on different platforms.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, bro, for everything. Go ahead if you have one last.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, and if we just kind of scratch the surface as far as the biblical case, over on YouTube, I got quite a few podcasts now talking about like physical evidence, more history stuff, possibly like the Tataria old world building stuff, playing into the idea that maybe the dark ages were not so dark, and maybe that was the 1,000-year dark ages were actually, as the devil would flip it upside down, dark, yes. Dark, light, light, dark, So anyways, I appreciate you having me on, brother. It was a blast. Love you.
I love you too. And God bless everybody that's listening. And please share this podcast give us a 5-star review and on Apple and all the distributors. Thank you. God bless you.